So the topic for tonight's live stream is the creative power of evolutionary pressure. The creative power of evolutionary pressure. Now, I want to start this exploration tonight by talking a little bit about the words, creative power of evolutionary pressure, because they are important. The words that we choose, they're important. In this case, they're very intentional. And I want to just talk a little bit about the words. Now, I think at this point, we all have an understanding of the power of speaking words, speaking into existence, putting, shaping vibrations in a way that communicates information, and how each time that we assign language to something, we are speaking that something really into existence, either for ourselves or possibly for ourselves and others, depending on the situation. But we're, and God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. Like in the beginning was the Word. Like it is us asserting our creative power in calling something a certain way, that really causes that thing to be that way. We're the observer. In the quantum double slit experiment, we're the ones who are collapsing the field of infinite possibilities and measuring something and seeing it as being in a finite thing. When we speak words, when we choose words, when we use our words, it's exactly what we're doing. We're collapsing the quantum field of infinite possibilities, and we're calling something a certain way. We're saying this is what I see something to be. So when we fully understand the creative power of our language for ourselves and others, it naturally follows that we begin to watch our words, and we begin to speak consciously and with intention, as to the best of our ability. I think that there's always the possibility that we take a little snooze in our lives and we can fall asleep temporarily. I still do from time to time. I'll have a momentary, lapse where I drift off for a moment and I forget the creative power of my words, and I'll say something. But the important thing is I've developed that mechanism to the point where most of the time, as soon as the words come out of my mouth, I can feel that their vibration is not true, which means that I'm like artificially limiting myself by what I just said. Like I'll call something a certain way and instantly my heart will be like, nope, that wasn't it. Whatever you just said is not true. You just lied. You just spoke a mistruth. Even if it just came from a place of, kind of snoozing or kind of forgetting for a moment my creative power, or just for a moment telling a story based on a inferior judgment of the circumstances, a lower or not informed by spiritual vision judgment of circumstances, and I'll say something like that. But those being the exceptions, and having installed the software to catch those things so that I can rewrite them on the spot, it really does become a practice of a conscious creator to use words consciously and with intention and purposefully, full of purpose. So I say all of that to say that we're going to start this exploration by talking just about the words. So let's talk about the words evolutionary pressure. Evolutionary pressure. So I use the term evolutionary pressure to describe what a lot of other people might use words like hardship, obstacles, challenges, hard times, resistance, turbulent times, uncertain times. Just there's a lot of things that people will use words like that, like something's difficult or hard or challenging, right? And in all of those words convey a very specific type of energy. And as I was kind of going through my journey of becoming more aware of the creative power of my words, I would find myself realizing that some of the words I was using to describe situations in my life were outdated. They weren't in line. Not that I didn't want to still speak truthfully about my experience. Really, I did want to speak truthfully about my experience, and I found that the words I was using previously, like hardship or challenge or resistance or whatever like that, they just didn't fit, because those are old words for a new way of being. So those old words are the old man's vocabulary. We got rid of the old man, so we need new words for the new man's vocabulary. So I adopted this term, evolutionary pressure. So there's this idea that necessity is the mother of invention. Maybe you've heard this before. Necessity is the mother of invention, meaning that when we need something and it's critically important to our lives, that's, in the question is also the answer. So with the need is also the solution, or with the problem in lies the solution. So until I need to, really accomplish something, like it's probably not just going to happen randomly. Like there has to be kind of like this invitation or this inspiration to think in a new way before a new solution will be built. So this idea of evolutionary pressure, it's like, and necessity being the mother of invention. It's like we're in a situation as humans, just thinking broadly, broad spectrum of the human experience. We're in a situation where we are here to learn about ourselves. We're here to learn about ourselves. We're here to experience ourselves. It says God is a God of experience. God is known through experience. And another way I've heard this saying is, you are the universe experiencing itself. And there's this idea that if we did not experience evolutionary pressure, we would be in a place of stasis. If we to use another analogy, if the mother bird never pushed the baby birds out of the nest, they might grow up and live an entire life never knowing that they had wings and were able to fly. That mother taking that act of pushing the birds out of the nest is an act of evolutionary pressure. It's this pressure that forces them to make the leap, to make the jump, to become something further than they were the moment before that evolutionary pressure arrived. So when I look at the human story, like the royal human story, so like if we look at humanity as a whole, meaning every person that's ever lived and ever will live, all being part of like one human story, like when we look at that, and you kind of, I would say I believe in circular time, but for this analogy, I'm going to kind of talk about it almost like it's a linear thing. But if hopefully you'll understand that I'm using it for the sake of illustration. So if you look back across the history of humanity, it is a story of evolution of consciousness. It is literally, you can look back and you can see how humans over time throughout history have been gradually and slowly as a collective. I mean, there may be individuals within that collective that are more advanced or less advanced, but as a collective, as a whole, if you move through that timeline, you'll see how the collective as a whole has been evolving. History is a story of collective human evolution. And in so many ways, it is the evolutionary pressure that really foments or encourages or inspires or is the spark that lights the fire that drives our massive upgrades, there's so many examples. If you look at the whole of the human story, so many examples of evolutionary pressure. And I think perhaps the most important thing to understand is that evolutionary pressure is always a good thing. It is always a good thing. Even if initially it looks like a challenge, a hardship, difficulty, resistance, chaos, even if initially it shows up looking that way, it is always a tool. Evolutionary pressure is always a tool, and the result is always growth. It's always growth. So evolutionary pressure. Okay, so continuing to look at the words here. So evolutionary, meaning we're literally living a royal story of human evolution and also an individual story of human evolution. And the two are we're kind of in a dance between those two. Our individual evolution, which affects the collective's evolution, and vice versa. You know, there's kind of a dance or a relationship that's happening there. So we're all in this process of evolving, and pressure is a internal or external reason or circumstance or situation or some aspect of a story that is the catalyst for more rapid growth in terms of evolution. So the pressure is the catalyst. So we're always evolving, we're always on an evolutionary story, and the pressure is whatever part of the storyline shows up to encourage us or bump us out of the nest, show us our wings, or inspire some level of expansion, like whatever it is. Okay, so that's kind of looking at it from a macro level. I also want to look at it a little bit smaller, a little bit more personal. We're going to slowly kind of bring this home into how do we apply this concept into our lives, into our actual day-to-day reality. Okay, so evolutionary pressures. So being an active member of this community for about, I think I'm going on about 4 years now, and having a role where I'm teaching and I'm doing videos and all this type of stuff, I interact with a lot of people who share their experiences with me on some level. And what I see over and 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 over again, to the point where it's essentially a ubiquitous story. Everyone has one. Everyone has, on some level, these components of their story. Over and over again, what I see is that a lot of people find this path of self-realization through something that happened in their life that was unexpected and upset the pre-existing order. It knocked them off balance. It upset the apple cart. It oftentimes was a surprise. Sometimes it was catastrophic. I've heard stories about people getting a diagnosis that was terminal, and all of a sudden they're like, whoa, I didn't see that coming out of anywhere. All of a sudden I've got this thing, and like life is just totally flipped on its ear. Evolutionary pressure. I've heard stories about car accidents that just like completely just obliterate the previous normal of a person's life and cause them to ask new questions. I've heard about divorce. I've heard about death or of a child. I've heard about death of loved ones. I've heard about death of spouses, death of fiancés, things of that nature. It's like you think you have this really great thing going. You have this life partner. You're in this great situation. Everything is ostensibly great, and then all of a sudden the pre-existing order completely disrupted, and you're left spinning like, what just happened? I just lost whatever. And that causes you to ask new questions. Evolutionary pressure. There are very few people, I'm not going to say it's impossible because I don't believe anything is impossible, but there's very few people who are just born and come out with, you know, everything's great and never experience any hardship and also wake up to the truth of their own inner creative power. There's something about the pressure that creates the diamond. There's very few diamonds that were not created through pressure. I'm not going to say it's impossible, but there's very few of them. I can confidently say that, right? Okay, so if evolutionary pressure is most commonly the things that it's like one of the most common mechanisms or common tools that really provokes us to make a change, to make some sort of change, because the pre-existing paradigm no longer fits. Whatever it was that was working before us doesn't work anymore. The pre-existing paradigm no longer fits. So I have to make a change. This evolutionary pressure requires that I make a change. And that's where the first part of tonight's title comes in, the creative power of evolutionary pressure. Because we are forced to come up with new ideas, new answers, new approaches. We're forced to break outside of the previous mold, the old man, which no longer fits, because that normal has been disrupted. And we're at a point where we have to make a change. And that is what leads to the creative power of evolutionary pressure, because as the evolutionary pressure is applied, the creative power is our response to the evolutionary pressure, where we stand up and we say, okay, old paradigm isn't going to work for me anymore. Time to do something different. And one of the things that we commonly do that's different, again, hearing these stories, thousands of them, is we start to ask new questions. We start to ask new questions. Necessity is the mother of invention. It's not really until we really need something that we're often inspired to figure out how to do it. And by figure out how I do it, I really do believe that the answer is embedded in the question, and the solution is embedded in the problem. It's a two-part thing. So really, it's about, am I going to ask the new question? Am I going to, you know, am I going to take that step and exceed my previous boundaries and see something new? Am I going to do that? And evolutionary pressure requires that we do. Requires that we do. Now, here's the thing. At some point, you become aware that this is kind of the MO. It's kind of like, you know, if every writer has their style, every author has their style, every musician has their style. It's like kind of like their hallmark or trademark things that, like, oh, you know, just by reading this little block of text, I can kind of figure out that this was, you know, Shakespeare or whatever. Like even if I didn't know exactly, I could probably guess, because it's got some of the trademarks or hallmarks of kind of the way it's written, right? Well, the thing is the great drama, the grand drama of life that we all are living. There's one really one screenwriter that's writing all of it, and is the one that has written the greatest story ever told. So there's kind of these certain hallmarks or trademarks or giveaways in terms of the way the stories of our lives are written. And you know, I've been listening to Joseph Campbell recently, so the idea of the hero's journey comes to mind in this. But yeah, we're all living out a hero's journey, and we, at some point, we start to become aware that the architect that is writing this whole drama that we're living out kind of has a certain style, and that certain style involves the application of evolutionary pressure. So at some point, I'm going to say that a little bit better. It involves the application of evolutionary pressure, meaning that it involves the use of often surprising or unexpected events that upset the pre-existing balance or order as a plot tool. It's the twist. The architect of the universe who writes all of these stories that we're all living out as humanity loves the plot twist, loves to just whip the rug right out from people and revels in the beauty of the growth and expansion that comes from that experience. That's kind of the hallmark or trademark of these dramas that we're each living out individually and collectively. It's kind of the style. So when we start to realize that we're all just, living this story, and we start to realize that evolutionary pressure is a plot tool for the telling of this story, at some point, we begin to embrace evolutionary pressure. We begin to welcome evolutionary pressure. Now, a big part of getting to the point where we can embrace and welcome evolutionary pressure, part of it is developing and cultivating our spiritual vision. Because our spiritual vision, the clear seeing of the mystic who understands that I am the cause, our spiritual vision helps us see past the initial circumstances, helps us see beyond the initial circumstances, meaning that our spiritual vision is that still small voice in the back of our consciousness that when the rug is swept out from under us and all of a sudden some sort of unexpected event happens and we're facing a different problem or apparent loss of something or whatever it is, it's like, whoa, where did that come from? Like, at some point we have to understand that is a tool, and we are embracing that and using our spiritual vision. We're able to see it for what it is, and also see that even if we don't consciously comprehend the exact details of the unfolding yet, our spiritual vision at least knows that there is an unfolding taking place, and that ultimately this event will be in my favor, even if initially I don't see how that could be the case. My spiritual vision, which is the higher seeing, the clear seeing of the mystic who sees that I am the cause, knows that the outcome of this will be for the higher good. It will be. Even if it's not immediately apparent how that will be the case, the spiritual vision allows us to see that. So part of getting to the point where we can embrace evolutionary pressure is developing and cultivating our spiritual vision, that knowing and that seeing. And part of how we do that, and this is where we get into some of the more practical real world application of like, how does this work? Part of how we do that is by sitting with our own personal body of experiences. If you haven't done this, this is a great reflection exercise, great opportunity to kind of look back across your life and kind of build that body of personal experiences. But basically the idea is you look back at your life and you look at something that was an extreme demonstration of evolutionary pressure. It was the year that you had a huge financial loss. It was the year that you had a divorce. It was the year that you lost a job unexpectedly. It was the year that you faced a tremendous illness, or you lost a parent or a friend to an illness or something like that. Like, you look back at those situations that were really, really intense, and you ask, it comes from the spirit of curiosity and wonder. I wonder, what was it that was the gift in that event? Like I wonder what really was the gift in that event? And maybe you can point to it immediately and be like, oh, it's definitely this, definitely that. But chances are, if you can do that, it's because you've kind of already worked it out before. There's a chance there might be some events that maybe you haven't sat with before. then maybe you do need to kind of look back. But the idea being that you're kind of training your brain when you're doing that. You're kind of training your brain to see how that evolutionary pressure, that incident of evolutionary pressure led to further unfolding, further growth, further expansion, further development, further blossoming, blooming, harvesting, an expansion of what it means to be you, growth, a fuller, more beautiful embodiment of you, or even just added to your story, or gave you experiences that allow you to relate more to others. Like there's so many different ways to characterize the benefits that evolutionary pressure brings us, but to really get good at doing it, you have to sit with your own stories in your own life and look at, okay, this was the evolutionary pressure, this is what unfolded out of it. And it may not be one thing, it may be hosts of things. And I can look back at my life, and there's so many things that felt like really intense evolutionary pressure at the time, and I'm like, wow, I can see how all of those were necessary to get me to where I am now. And the one that, the evolutionary pressure that I face in my life now, I know is necessary to get me to tomorrow, the man that I continue to grow and develop, and more fully and beautifully embody. So cultivating the spiritual vision, cultivating the ability to see based on your own body of personal evidence, those are key skills to work on as we develop this ability to embrace evolutionary pressure. Another is our skills of resilience. Our skills of resilience. Now, resilience is defined as basically how quickly we can rebound or rebalance in the face of change or rapid change, right? So, when we embrace and are resilient to change, when we embrace change and resilient to change, we're resilient and can embrace evolutionary pressure, because ultimately that's what evolutionary pressure asks of us. It asks us to change, and it asks us to embrace change. And our resilience is a big part of how we're going to answer that request, how we're going to stand up and show up and be willing to ride that wave of evolutionary pressure to that outcome in a place of openness and embracing and appreciating, really, and being grateful for the evolutionary pressure as it pushes on us. So when we talk about the skills and tools of resilience, we talk about things like, what are my my self-soothing and self-care practices, right? So, that's where practices like heart brain coherence, not just once or twice, but like quite literally making it a daily thing, and incorporating it to the point where you're actually living in that space of heart brain coherence, makes you profoundly resilient to change, It's a very important tool. Self-care, learning to listen to yourself, prioritizing being gentle and honoring to your body, to your inner child. I was listening to a teacher earlier, and he was talking about how really we have a couple different voices going on inside of our psyche at any given time, but he was talking in particular about our inner child, and how our inner child is the one that's curious and wants to explore and believes that he or she has really beautiful gifts to give to the world, and sees a lot of possibilities and sees a lot of options, and and wants to explore and wants to build and grow and create. And then our more like our adult self or whatever is kind of that, like, oh, well, I should do such and such, or I need to be responsible about such and such or whatever. And it's kind of like this dance between them. But in particular, what I found illuminating about what he was saying is he was talking about the tone of that relationship. And he's like, when you start to identify that other voice as being your inner child and the other voice as being your inner adult, you can start to monitor that relationship and be like, okay, how am I speaking to this part of myself? Am I honoring my child? Like, or am I telling my child that he doesn't have anything to offer and he's not that good at whatever he's doing and nobody's really going to care about the art that he makes, right? Like, cause like, that's not cool to say to a kid. Like you'd never just walk up to some kid on the street and be like, you know what? You don't have anything to offer and you suck at whatever you're doing and you should probably just take your ball and go home. Like you would never ever do that. But how many times do we allow that voice to speak? And I don't know, maybe it's just me because I know I have that voice sometimes, but I have a feeling it's probably not just me. I feel like sometimes we listen to this voice that has the wrong tone. And we have the opportunity to adjust that tone and be like, well, hold on. My inner child has all the gifts in the world, is incredibly talented, and I'm not going to tell him he can't do anything. I'm always going to encourage him, but that doesn't mean I can't be responsible as well, right? It's like a dance, and you're managing the tone. You're managing the tone of like how that's happening. And in my mind, that is a very beautiful way to describe what I feel is the inner self-talk portion of self-care. Yeah, I can take care of my body. I can stretch, I can walk, I can, go stand on the grass outside and ground, I can breathe, I can wash my body, I can eat really delicious, healthy, nutritious food, right? Like I can do all these things like my physical body, but like in my mind, that's only part of the equation of self-care. And the other part is like, how am I treating my inner world? Like, is my inner world beautiful? What thoughts am I allowing myself to think? What's the tone of that conversation between, my inner child and my inner adult? Like, where is that relationship? What in my mind, self-care encompasses all of these things. And when our self-care game is being played to a level of, I would say a high level of competency, right? Like when we value this to the point where we're like, I'm gonna get good at self-care. Like I'm gonna get good at it. I'm gonna get good at honoring and respecting my inner and outer bodies. It's like my inner mental body, my outer physical body. Like I'm gonna get good at this. This is something I'm gonna excel at. Like when we prioritize that, when we play that game to a high level of performance, that is going to dramatically enhance our ability to be resilient and inspire us to embrace evolutionary pressure. Now, here's why evolutionary pressure is so important. If we remain in stasis, if we don't experience evolutionary pressure, we don't grow. It's like owning a gold mine. It's like you own a gold mine, like you were given this giant tract of land and you know that there is a huge vein of gold worth trillions of dollars. It's one of the largest finds ever discovered on this land. And you pitch a tent and you live out your days and you never ever bother to dig for it. You never ever bother to dig for it. You don't need it. You never go looking for it. Maybe you know that it's there, but you're certainly not going to bother trying to find it or touch it or anything until the storm comes along or some sort of need arises that forces you to go digging for your treasure, right? And that's the role that evolutionary pressure plays. It forces you to go digging for your treasure. And none of us came to Earth to be poor. Not poor in spirit, not poor in finances, not poor in abilities, poor in gifts, poor in friendship, poor in love. None of us came from the infinite abundance of all that is to Earth to experience being poor. We all came here to experience treasure, came here to experience the discovery, the uncovering, the unwrapping, the celebration, the experiencing, the joyousness of treasure. And we only ever find the treasure. We don't even know it's there until we're forced to look for it. And the evolutionary pressure is what says, hey, 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 get uncomfortable. Like, get uncomfortable. Stretch those boundaries. Push to the edge. Find your limits. Go beyond them. There's more. You are more. You are bigger than you think you are. You are taller than you think you are. You are more than you think you are. You are better than you think you are. And the only way you're going to find out that any of this is true is if you actually take that step forward and go find out for yourself. You actually have to get up and you have to take that step forward. And that is exactly the role that evolutionary pressure plays in our lives. It's that call, that phone call that says, hey, your services are required. You got to stand up. You got to stand up. You got to be more. You got to die to what you were yesterday, because those answers aren't gonna fit anymore. They're not gonna work for you anymore. You got to die to what you were yesterday, and you got to become something further today. You got to become something new today. You've got new challenges. You've got something new that needs to be overcome. Now, challenges, right? I don't really like that word. Evolutionary pressure. Again, evolutionary pressure is a word that I like to substitute in the place of challenges. You know, because that's really all it ever is. It's an invitation to go further, an invitation to expand. It's that provocation shakes the cage a little bit, upends the pre-existing order, says, hey, it's time to grow. And the creative power is our response to the evolutionary pressure. Now, Neville talks about using the law to cushion the blows of life. He doesn't say use the law to enter a space of profound stasis. He doesn't say use the law to get really, really, really comfortable, you know, the fat cat up on the hill, and never go anywhere and never do anything and never be anything and never stretch, never bother to leave the couch. That's not what he says to do. I'm not saying you can't do that. You can do whatever you want. But I am saying that if you try to do that, I believe there's a bigger story at play. And I believe that at this point, if you tried to do that, evolutionary pressure would come along and upset your pre-existing order and bump you out of your comfort zone and, in a manner of speaking, force you to grow. Force you to grow. Now, the whole idea is not to stop growing, not to so treasure our comfort that we refuse to grow. That is never the idea. The idea is always to embrace the opportunity to grow and to become comfortable in the stretch, comfortable in the stretch, comfortable in the growth, comfortable being uncomfortable. I'm reminded of my yoga teacher. One of the key ideas of yoga is basically putting yourself into a posture or a pose. You're holding a certain pose with your body, a certain arrangement of how you're holding your body. And the idea is to basically get in this place where you are exerting yourself, but you're exerting only the muscles that you need to exert. You're relaxing everything else. And the whole idea is that you breathe steadily the entire time. In fact, I have a yoga teacher. If you stop, like if you start to breathe too heavy, she'll tell you to get out of the posture. You're only supposed to go into the posture as far as you can maintain your calm and normal, natural, in through the nose, out through the nose breathing. And the idea behind that is to find that space, find that comfort in the place of discomfort, because you're stretching, you're holding, you're in some sort of posture, your muscles are being exerted, but you're holding that comfort, that relaxation, that steady breath within the stretch, within the exertion, within the action, whatever it is. And I think that that is a potent analogy. In fact, I see yoga as a training for real life for exactly that reason. It's like we're just acting out in our bodies what we do in our consciousness, like or what we, at least what we aspire to be able to do in our consciousness, to hold that normal breathing, that normal relaxed state, even while we're under the pressure, especially while the heat is on, especially while the heat is on. So the idea is that the evolutionary pressure forces us to ask new questions. And when we ask the new questions, we find new answers. And each of the answers that we find is a further unfolding of the treasure within us, the treasure that we are. So we are finding and we are discovering more of our own inner beauty, the intricacies of our own inner beauty as we experience these things, as we experience evolutionary pressure, as we respond to the so-called pressures or circumstances of our world. That's the basic idea here. And the idea is that we can learn to embrace these things that happen in our world through a couple of these exercises. This idea of going back and looking over our own personal body of evidence. Yeah, it helps to have stories from other people, sure, but there is no substitute for being able to look back at your own life story and be like, look, I don't have to ask anybody else how this works. I see how it works. I see how this evolutionary pressure has led me to where I am now, or led to this breakthrough, or led to that breakthrough. Another one is developing the tools of self-care. We talked about how that includes both the internal worlds and the internal mental worlds and the external physical body. We talked about this idea of resilience, this idea of having spiritual vision, of being able to look ahead and look past and through the circumstances that appear to be intense or pressureful, hot, and see, hey, I know, even if I can't see exactly how right now, I know that this is a bridge of incidents to my growth. It is more treasure arriving in my life. That is the nature of evolutionary pressure. And of course, we can bring it full circle in a manner of speaking. We can talk about what is happening right now. We can talk about what is happening right now on planet Earth. How appropriate. We can talk about what is happening right now on planet Earth. I was on a call with my dad and his wife yesterday. And my dad is remarried now, and his wife was a school teacher. And so she was sharing a little bit about how she has contacts in the school systems and all this type of stuff. She was sharing a little bit about how what has been happening has been evolving the nature of school, and how a lot of things are being rethought. And she said, our education system has been out of date for a long time. And she said, it really looks like this circumstance, this situation is the perfect excuse to basically just go back to the drawing board and rewrite, redefine what schooling is for American children. And I said, what's interesting is that you could take that word schooling, like this is our opportunity to go back and rewrite and redefine what schooling is for American children. I was like, really? You could say that about literally anything right now. Right now, you could say that about literally anything. You could say, now's pretty much the perfect time to go back and rewrite and redefine completely our idea of politics, government, finance, the economy, how we do commerce, right? How we buy and sell what we need, jobs, manufacturing, where we get our things from, how we treat the earth, how we treat others, communities, events, gathering, how we spend our money. The list goes on and on and on. We are living in a time where literally every single aspect of modern day society can be rewritten and can be redefined. And those conversations are happening right now. And it is evolutionary pressure. Like In my lifetime, because I think World War II was probably a similar level of global evolutionary pressure, but since World War II, or at least in my lifetime, we haven't had evolutionary pressure like what we're having right now on planet Earth in human civilization. We just haven't. And it's happening right now. And it's opening up the opportunity to rewrite literally everything. And that's exactly why I'm bringing you this message tonight, because it is people like us who lead with our imaginal pictures. We lead with us living in the end, because Neville says over and over again that unimaginative men and women everywhere are constantly falling under the enchantments of imaginary men and women who imagine consciously and with intention and with love, who are guided by their spiritual vision, who are guided by their true remembering of their true inheritance of who they truly are. When they imagine wisely and they imagine lovingly on behalf of themselves and others, we are literally directing the flow of the outpicturing of all of these questions that are being asked in a new way, unlike they've ever been asked before. And we, in so many ways, when we stand up and we accept this inheritance, because that's what it is, it's riches, it's wealth. When we stand up and we accept this inheritance, we walk in with our chins up, our heads raised into the kingdom, and we say, all right, I'm here. I know what I want. I'm asking for it. I'm not even asking for it as though it's something outside of myself, but I'm asking for it from the Father in me, which means I'm appropriating it. I'm appropriating my vision of the future. When we have the courage and the boldness to do that, when we can stand tall and completely ignore all the people crying about what was, complaining about what was, pointing at what's burning right now, we can completely shut off all of that and say, this is the evolutionary pressure all of us have been waiting for, and you either see it or you don't. And us seeing it, us having the skills to embrace it, we get to write what's next. We get to write it because they are falling under our enchantments. We get to write it. It's on us. And it's a beautiful and wealthy responsibility. A beautiful and wealthy responsibility. But we have to see this for what it is. We have to see this for what it is. We have to see it for the opportunity that it is. We have to embrace it. We have to say, I was born for a time exactly like this. For such a time as this. That is why I'm here. That is exactly why I am here, for a time exactly like this. Whatever corner of the world you are right now, whatever you feel like your kingdom looks like right now, whatever you feel like your influence looks like right now, you are exactly where you need to be to embrace the evolutionary pressure and write your outcome. Write it, live it, dream it, do it, be it. Boldly assert, appropriate. Don't be among the onlookers, the ones pointing, oh, look at the burning building. Oh, look, now the stairs are on fire. Oh, look, now the car's on fire. Don't be transfixed by the evidence of the senses. Use your spiritual vision. See what's beyond that burning building. See the phoenix rising from the ashes. See the new world that's being built on the other side. Be a part of that. Actively construct in it. Go to work in your imagination. What would the feeling be like? What would the feeling be like? I was talking to a friend of mine who is a naturalized citizen of the United States. He was not born in the United States. I was talking to him the other day and he said, honestly, dude, he said, I am so grateful to be living in America. He's like, as far as I'm concerned, everyone who's living in America, and this, he's like, as far as I'm concerned, everyone who's living in America should wake up every morning and basically say the Pledge of Allegiance, just as like honor and appreciation and gratitude for being in America. He's like, just the mere fact that we're in America already puts us in the 1%. And that's just him reflecting on what he knows to be true based on where he was born and where he lives now. But you know what his comment did for me? Is it planted into my brain? I was like, you know what? For way too long, I have accepted the fact that our country is what previously I would use the words shit show. That's how I would describe the United States. But we started this conversation talking about the importance of our language. So when I look at the United States of America and I say the United States of America is a shit show, I am God decreeing that the United States of America is a shit show. And that goes for everything else that I speak into existence too. So I changed the story. In my mind, I started thinking, and this is, I mean, I'm rewriting 30 years of programming here, so it's a, slowly but surely type thing. In my mind, I'm starting to imagine, what would the feeling be like if America was everything that its founding fathers dreamed it could be? What would the feeling be like? What would that feeling be like? What if I woke up and I knew that we were living not in a prideful way, but like in a I'm proud of our growth way, living in the best country on the planet. And I'm using some of this just colloquially because I don't really believe in one country being better than the others, but I trust that you're getting the vibe of what I'm saying. What would the feeling be like if we were proud to be a part of this country, if we were proud of our political system, if our leaders were honorable and kind and loving and treated each other as such? What would that feeling be like? Why not live in that? Why not live in that? If we truly believe that we can write the future in our imagination by feeling it real, why not feel that real? Why not feel that real? Not that we're erasing evil from the planet. I don't believe that it's really even possible to do that, but it doesn't mean that we cannot write a different script. We cannot write a different story, write a new conversation. I believe we have every opportunity to do so. And we can't wait on those people who don't necessarily have spiritual vision, who don't necessarily have any of the tools that we have, who don't necessarily even know about the creative power of imagination. We can't wait on them to do it for us. We have to be those leaders. We are here for such a time as this. We have to believe in the future. Believe it in. So Neville said the founding fathers didn't believe in the future, they believed it in. And we are the ancestors. We are the ancestors. You and I, Adam, Carrie, Jeanette, Andreza, Kylie, Wayne, Kajal, Julene, Anush, Taria, we are the ancestors. We are the founding fathers and the founding mothers. We must believe it in. We must. It's exactly why we are here. We are the ancestors. It's exactly the role that we are here to play. It's the part that we are here to play. Is your garden feeling watered? I hope it is. I hope it is. I knew tonight was going to be a rallying cry because that's what is needed right now. I know we've been in this thing for a while. At this point, it's like what? I don't even know how many weeks. It's been a lot of weeks that we've been in this thing. And it's exactly why the rally cry is needed right now. Because we, the men and women of vision, are needed more than ever. More than ever. Our services are required. We are here for such a time as this. Us, you, me, I, we, us. All right, I'm going to go through your comments. James 1, 2 through 4. Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. Let perseverance finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking in anything. Perfect. Perfect. Thank you, Wayne. The role of evolutionary pressure, get uncomfortable. Okay, yeah, I know. And also treasure. That's what it is, treasure. It is treasure. Neville gave the coolest analogy with beans. He said, you throw in a jar various sizes of beans and you shake it. The big ones will eventually surface. The biggest and the great will always rise to the top. Yes, exactly. Perfect. Those who know their greatness, like a flower through the cracks of the pavement, comfortable in the growth, what I call clutch. Excellent. And there's the lecture. Perfect. This is holy ground because I stand upon it. Yes. Yes. Isn't it wonderful? Beautiful. The creative power of evolutionary pressure. This is how we become more than what we were yesterday. We must die daily, as the prophet said, I die daily, meaning we shed our former skin. Shed it, we outgrow it. Become something new, become something further, something expanded. When we walk into the throne room of the King, we walk with our heads held high because we know who we are. And when we ask, we appropriate it. We ask through feeling it real. What would the feeling be like? What would the feeling be like? If you look out at the world and you see injustice, close your eyes and think, what would the feeling be like if I saw justice? What would the feeling be like? My one more thought about my friend's comment about, that kind of triggered this idea of like, man, I've just kind of somehow lazily accepted that that my country is a certain way, or that the politics of my country are a certain way, or whatever. I'm like, wait a second, I'm let my guard down on that, but no more. Like, let's rethink this. What would the feeling be like? Now, one more thing about that is, it's like, how do we even know what we're aiming for unless we take the time to feel for it? Like, would we even know it when we saw it? Would we even know it that when we saw it, if we haven't taken the time to like really look at it? Do you know what I mean by that? It's like, with your with your desires, like you can say like, oh, I want to be rich. Like, that's one of the most common ones. I want to be rich. Okay, great, but like that could look so many different ways. Like, do you want to work for your money? Do you want to just like win your money and have it pay you? Do you want to like there, and all of these different questions, like the answers, it feels a little different way. Like there's, but it's like, how are you ever really going to know what you want and like what you're imagining for and what you're creating unless you take the time to really feel for it? What exactly do I want it to feel like? And so it's like that same question is kind of applied to this. It's like, well, shoot, I've gotten so used to accepting my country for what it appears to be in terms of so-called facts, like I haven't even really taken that moment to like, until this new question, to like really think about like, what kind of country would I want to live in? Like, how would I want my government to be organized? How would I want my politicians to talk to each other and others? Like, what would I want the common political discourse to be? Like, what would I want elections to look like? Like, how would I you know, like can I imagine like something completely different and like get a feel for what that might be? And then can I rest in the knowing that I have created that in my imagination and just let the bridge work its path. Let the people fall under the enchantments. Let it begin to outpicture and bring back evidence in my life. If I believe I can use this to create a job, to you know, find a partner, to find my keys, right? Like if I believe in the power for that, why can't I believe in the power for sculpting a nation, sculpting my experience of a nation? It's an interesting question to ask, and I hope that you're inspired in the asking of it through this conversation. Death is every day and resurrection is every day. Adam, great point. Resurrection is every day. Constantly resurrecting the new man, asking the new questions. Beautiful. All right, my friends. I hope you feel inspired. I hope you feel encouraged. And I trust that this will lead to you asking new questions. Perhaps one of those questions would be how can I embrace more and more? How can I open and relax and surrender into this growth, this expansion, this stretching? Like how can I open to it rather than shying away from it or resisting it in any way? Like how can I say yes? Yes, I know that this is growth. I know this is more. I know that this is all for my best good. In fact, I don't even believe that I can be hurt. Like, you know, my body, you know, like how can I, you know, how can I surrender into this, you know, and embrace it and thrive. You know, if thrive is described as growing vigorously, like how can I surrender in and thrive and grow vigorously? You know, whatever the circumstances. Yeah, I've talked a lot about, you know, the current events, but honestly, this goes for any time of life, any time you're ever feeling any level of evolutionary pressure. And if you're not feeling evolutionary pressure, well, get ready because it's coming. Because we're not here for stasis. We're not here to be poor. We're here to be rich. We're here to be wealthy. We're here to experience the inheritance, our divine inheritance. And big part of that, like, again, you know, camping on a gold mine, like you have to dig to discover. Like you have to go and ask that question. You have to leave, you know, be the prodigal son. You have to leave in order to discover and come back enriched. And that's where we are. Awesome. Thank you, Andresa. I'm glad. Very good. Sit with this. Let the new questions bubble up in your being. Ask from a place of wonder. You know, don't demand an answer right away. Allow yourself to relax into the asking of how can I become more aligned? How can I become more open, more embracing, more appreciative, even grateful for, you know, these pressures. Just allow yourself to relax into the expansion and thrive and thrive. Beautiful. Okay, my friends. That'll be all for tonight. Thank you very much for joining me. Thank you very much for holding this beautiful space of watering our gardens. I'm imagining each of you is well. I'm imagining each of you is thriving, growing. And I continue to see that for all of you as well. Imagine wisely, my friends. I'll talk to you all soon. Good night.